Welcome to Pen by Design, the podcast that delves into the craft of writing, publishing, and captivating stories that ignite our imagination. I'm your humble host, Destiny Jordan. With the author business constantly evolving and brimming with possibilities, me and my awesome guests are here to guide you through every step of the journey. Pen your own story designed by you. So let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to Pen by Design. Here we talk about publishing, the author journey, and just being a creative entrepreneur. And so today we have the lovely Victoria Lofton Thomas here with us. So not only is she an accomplished author, published author for one, she's an inspiring speaker, a creative mind behind her brand, Victoria T Talks. Her journey in the realm of words has been nothing short of awe-inspiring with her latest book, Yeshua. Yes, as you can see, mine is all marked up. There's highlights in here. It's been going to work. It's a very wonderful book. And it's just a testament of the power of faith, love, and just personal triumph. So within these pages of her book, she really unveils the transformative journey of conquering deep-seated traumas like depression and even the topic of abortion, all through the unwavering embrace of Christ's love. Her words bear the weight of authenticity and transparency, piercing through the hearts of readers, from empowering women and young girls across the globe to step into their God-given identities and live their lives with unguarded freedom. So here we go, Victoria.
Thank you so much for having me. I don't know if I could have introduced myself any better than you just did. So thank you. And I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh my gosh, likewise. I'm excited. I can fit into your schedule because, girl, you be around the world.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Things are picking up, but we're not. Things are picking up. But the Lord take me where he wants me to go. So I'm excited about it.
Awesome. So the first question I have for you is, what was it like to publish your first book? And how did you kind of keep going through the process? Because it's kind of a hard process, as I've heard.
Yeah, so writing is definitely a hard process. For me, I like to say it may have been a little harder because I didn't consider myself a writer a few years ago. And so when the Lord brought this to me, I was like, get somebody else to do it, right? I was not feeling it. I didn't want to do it. It actually took me like over a year before I set to write anything. And so throughout the process of writing, it was hard. So I'm not going to lie about that because I realized that I was my book. And so it was a healing process for me. So the more that I would write, the more was required. So I was thinking, hey, I have these experiences, a lot of them are what not to do. And so I can just talk about, whatever, just talk about it. And so in this book, it was bringing over those experiences, but it was also telling people that there's healing after. And so you can't do that unless there's healing before. And so it was definitely a journey, but one that I'm happy I went on.
For sure. It's I'm thankful because just reading your book just was a lot for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, stuff like talking about things that no one really talks about. And usually when you're enshrouded in these type of issues, you feel like you're the only one going through these things. And it's kind of hard to know where to turn to for a lot of this. But even though, so one thing I wanted to ask about, because you did talk about how hard it was to write it and took you a year, which most people say it takes a year if you're new to it. But then do you feel like your writing process evolved as you kept on writing?
I would say I would use the term evolve very loosely. It did change throughout the process. Some parts were easy to write. Some parts were harder. I think what did change was the discipline that I gained about it, and being able to go back and read it. Because I also had a history of not being a completer, right? And so this was one of the first things that I was able to go back and complete and get done. So as deadlines were set for me, and as the Lord would lead me to look back and say, hey, he asked this of me and I finished it, was very fulfilling to me. So I found, purpose throughout the process. And so even though the writing was just as hard in the beginning, even harder in the end, because that's when he was really getting deep, um, just being able to complete it and getting it done and knowing that I was walking in purpose was enough to kind of, motivate me to, hey, we came this far, you're a finisher. This is important, this is very important and it's bigger than you. And so that pushed me. And so I learned that throughout my process of writing my first book.
Wow, that really hits home when you talk about discipline and just writing with purpose. That's kind of stuck out to me, and like, because when you're writing a book, it's kind of like you're at the desk by yourself, you're at the computer by yourself, typing away on these keys, just typing away, and you don't at the time you don't feel like there's much use to it. Who's going to read this? And then that's when I feel like all the thoughts for me come to you, like, who's going to read this? Why am I doing this? No one understands what I'm doing because no one else I know is a writer. No one else I know does this type of thing. So what makes me, able to do these types of things that I feel that are hard?
Definitely. And I definitely understand that because it is a fear. It's just like, will people like it? Will people understand? And in a book like mine, being my first book, and it won't be my last for sure. So working on getting one finished here soon. So 2 more will be finished this year. So I'm excited. But it is a fear behind it. And especially with the transparency, because I know that our stories aren't for everyone. And everybody has different opinions and everybody won't agree. And so on a lot of these topics that we would call taboo, in a sense, especially with the church background, I knew that it wouldn't be taken lightly. And so it's like, okay, going into it, a lot of people might not agree. A lot of people might not like it. And how will it sell? Will it be worth all that I put into it? Will I write this book because now I know it's about me and my healing process? And will I be the only one changed from it? Was a fear for me.
So kind of how did you kind of get over that fear to push through that fear to write it and even publish it? That's a whole nother step.
Yes. And so the fear kind of still lingered. It started to get less and less. But it was kind of still there because you never, we're jumping into something new. Sometimes you don't know how deep it is and where it's going to lead you. But I had committed to the process and I knew that it was bigger than me. And so the Lord did give me a team of people and people that were in my life that helped push me. It's like, hey, I know even my publisher was big in me writing this book. She's like, hey, how many pages you got today? Checking on you. How are you feeling? What is the Lord saying? And so he definitely surrounded me with people who were able to see the vision for me and not instead of me, but they were able to see it as well. And so on days where I felt a little bit low, they were able to pick me up. And so I was definitely thankful for that. Because on days where it's a little bit cloudy for me, somebody else like, hey, would remind me of why I was doing what I was doing. And it was the best decision I made and one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. And so I'm glad that I didn't stop.
So I am too, because this is quite a breakthrough type of book. My other thing is just kind of why this book and kind of why now, that type of thing.
Yes. And so I think just the time and the season I was in my life, and the Lord takes us through different seasons and wants better for us. And so I think I was definitely at a place where I wanted better. I didn't necessarily know what that was. And in order for God to give me the things I have now and the things that he plans on getting me, it was a lot of, behind the scenes work that needed to take place that I wasn't aware of. And so I will always make the joke, my life is so crazy. I'm gonna write a book about it one day. We're gonna have a movie about it one day. They need to put this on Lifetime. And so when he bought it to me, I was like, see, you got to be careful what you say. But it was definitely more strategic than that and just way bigger than that. And so I think that this is the time because with my transparency that I believe that God gifted me with, this is kind of like a different avenue for it to drive and get to people. Because like you mentioned before, a lot of times we think that we're all alone in a place or situation. And so I do believe and I know that transparency transforms. It helps others know that they're not alone in anything that they do. And also, I start to look at it like, okay, well, you say you can write the book, you say you have the experience, so why not me? You know, and I know that things that happen are bigger than me and they're for a reason. And so when he asked me for it then, I didn't understand. But now when I look back, I feel like it's the foundation that I have and the stepping stone I have to go forth and to help other people. Because more than anything, I want to be the person that I wish was in my life at a lot of different points in my book. And so I feel like he's equipped me to be that for somebody else.
Whew. I really hear that, especially being the resource for the younger you, the you when you're going through where's the guiding voice. That I do feel that is kind of, for a lot of people who get into writing, like that is some of the backbone of why. Usually people that if they write fiction, they're like, I don't see any good fiction books that speak to me. Let me go ahead and put it out there. And it's the idea from in your head saying this is a good idea to doing the action. Those are two different mindsets, two different parallels, two different worlds, but both require courage and discipline, which is bravo on that. So so you talked about you had a publisher earlier. Can I explain your publishing process and how that goes? Just kind of see so people get an idea of what to expect if they're going to publishers or what to do.
Yes. And so my publishing process, especially since I was so reluctant, God definitely gave me a great setup. And so he had told me at the beginning of that day, you know, your name is in rooms that your feet haven't been in yet. And I was like, Lord, that sounds so fancy and that sounds nice, but I need a publisher. Like, I need help. And so I had asked different people I know that wrote books. I was asking questions and I kind of didn't get anything. And then that same day later on, through a mutual friend at the time, I found myself in the middle of that day on the phone with a publisher who was new to publishing. And we were talking and speaking. I was like, you know, Lord, that's what you said. So I'm all hyped up. I'm amped up. I'm feeling good. And once we had that first meeting, it was just so many confirmations and things for me. And so I think just when looking for publishing, depending on what you're doing, making sure that you pray about it first and that you're asking God for people who share your vision and share your priorities and goals, you know, have the same morals. And I think that was important because I believe, honestly, that my publisher was excited for me, wanted to see me win. And it was just as much as the message that I had, she wanted to get out there as well. And so it wasn't about, okay, I'm going to do this for you, sign the check, and I'll see you later. She definitely worked with me and stood beside me and made sure, hey, we want to be impactful. Like, I don't want to have the first book to release. I don't need it to be in this month. I need when we send it for it to be everything God wants it to be, to connect and hit people like it's supposed to. And so I'm thankful for that.
Oh, that's really good. Just to be the fact that you kind of went out there and searched around, at least putting forth the effort, and it comes back to you. Say, like, hey, we heard your cry. Let's come over there and help you out.
And I was concerned for sure.
And there's for publishing, there's a lot of options, so it's really easy to get drowned out. Like, which one's the best one? Do you go traditional? There's self-publishing. There's people that are in between publishing. It's just getting out there, but really being dedicated and focused really helps kind of cut through that. And also friends of a friend. So also a question is, how did you promote your book?
Yeah, so with promoting now, that was a different learning process and a journey within itself. So it's like a lot of layers to it that I wasn't aware of, which I'm sure for good reason when I started off. So that was a different layer of putting yourself out there, making sure that you market. And so I asked again for help. So it might sound like I'm cheating a lot because I go to my daddy often and be like, hey, I need help, you know? And so I asked for help. And very soon after, I want to say it probably wasn't even 48 hours, I came across a business coach, right? And so I've been working with her and she's absolutely phenomenal and I love her. So she teaches me how to strategize and to work with things. I'm big on if I don't know how, I need to learn. And so I'm never ashamed to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me figure this out. And so that's been great in my marketing process is just sitting there and learning and sitting under somebody. Hey, how should I market this? How should I say this? And also, I do graphics myself as well. And so, putting what I already had as a skill and also being open to learn new information has helped me a lot with the marketing. But just because you finished the book does not mean you know how to market it and that you know how to sell it. And just because your book can be great doesn't mean that you'll necessarily put it out there and you'll sell 1,000 copies the first day, which is what I thought. And so learning that just as hard as I worked at the book, because the message is so important, I had to work and learn how to adjust at promoting it as well. Because it's no good to have the book and you have all of them sitting in your closet, but the message isn't getting out there. And so that has been a different journey on its own. So when jumping into it, knowing that, hey, before I see what I want to see, there will be different levels to this. But then once you learn it and you continue to write, the next book is a lot easier, it's a lot smoother, it's a lot less fear. And so knowing that that fall can last a while, but at the end, there's the greater.
Most definitely. So what just kind of break down someone just kind of get a little bit teensy bit of what type of marketing did you do? Was it like how did you start some of your marketing your book so people would know about it?
Yes. And so social media has been a big way I market it, especially because, as my business coach like to say, it's free advertising. So making sure I use the things at my disposal, like I'm going to post about it. You're going to see me out there, not too much, but just enough. So making sure I post, using the graphics as well. I have different events to market as well. Like when people purchase the book, we do local book clubs where people can meet. And so I do flyers for that sort of thing. Every once in a while, we might have a promotion to post out there as well. And as far as marketing is getting your face out there, because I am a brand, you know, people have to see me. I can't do it all from home. So I also make sure to look into like different vendor events where I can travel and connect and meet with new people is very important. So making sure to be active and to stay out there, use nothing is too much. And every platform, especially if it's free, is definitely a route to go. And so I believe in doing that, it builds confidence. And once you see people react to it, or once you get used to it, it becomes easier. And like you said, you have to be a walking billboard for yourself. Because if I don't believe in a book enough to try to go get you to buy it or to talk to you about it, I shouldn't expect anybody to want to buy it.
That's good right there. So this seems like for authors, and especially these first time authors, is really helping to put out this self confidence because what you just said, you don't believe in this book that you have cried and toiled over for however long, then you can't make anyone else believe it as well.
Ooh,
and that's just kind of thing. I do love you said like free. So kind of look at your social media. So anything free on Facebook, your Facebook friends, think like maybe TikTok if you're on there, Instagram, YouTube,
even LinkedIn. Like I have a LinkedIn account, and so I post my information even out there and my book and everything, even in that realm. So I've had people reach out like, "Hey, I know this is what you do. Would you like to come talk about your book here?" Which was surprising to me. And so even just any solution, anywhere I can be where you can see me. When you see me, you should see my brand and what I advertise, and my book should be there. And so thinking about it more as a lifestyle and not a moment has helped me a lot. Because you can be in the grocery store, like, or even my husband, which I feel like is the best husband in the world, and nobody can convince me otherwise. He will go to the gas station, even when I'm not there. Like, he sold books for me. It's like, hey, are you a reader? My wife, da da da. And so I'll give even my family business cards. And so when they're out and about, if somebody mentions something, they can help, and that's free to go different places. And so you can definitely go the route of paying. But I say as a new author, and especially starting off, what you don't want to do, because we're not in it for the money, but we need the money. Because to write a book, it costs money. To go to these be a vendor in places, it costs money. And so we have to be realistic with it as well. You know, Jesus is king and he is Lord, Um, yes. And when I go, I'm going to need my money. And to go, it costs money. And so you want to take advantage of every opportunity that you have. And so everything that you can think of, you can go sell, especially depending on your book. I learned like different groups on Facebook. Hey, if you have a group of people that's into this or that you used to hanging out with, then send it. Like it doesn't hurt anything. Like I said, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And the worst they can say is no or not right now. But even so, one person no can be another five. The next five people can say yes. And so just being open and making sure to look, as well as even an opportunity I had here to have my books in the mall here, which was great. And so having them here in the mall, it was somebody who worked that stand for me. My books was there. I never had to go to the store or be there. And so just looking for those opportunities that best serve you and where you get the most bang for your book. Because what you don't want to do is pay for publishing, pay for somebody to push the book, pray you have sales, and then now you've overexhausted yourself and your resources, hoping right that there is a sale. And then there's still no learning curve in that. So when you write your next book, you know, hey, I'm gonna need X amount of thousand to pray that somebody else pushes my vision for me. And so in this season, definitely want to make sure that I'm the one to push my own baby and deliver my own baby into this world.
Wow, that's wonderful for one, and there's so many nuggets in that one about being realistic with starting out and really kind of making a plan. Like, okay, what's all the free things, and what's all the little money I can put to the side to to fund it? Because when people think of publishing, it's just like it's gonna happen. Not really. Gonna take some. It's gonna take some sweat equity to be equal to that. And then not being, you did kind of, it made me sound like you're saying not be ashamed of money because like you need money for the mission. Like missions people ask for money all the time because to do what they need to do, it requires the tool of money. Doesn't make you money hungry, doesn't make you an evil person because everybody needs money.
Yes. For sure. And so it's your book, it's your baby, and it's for God, definitely. And I like to say it's his book, and he just allowed me to put my face on there against my will and my name on it, but it's his book. But at the same time, you know, that's what I do. It's who I am. That's who I was meant to be. And so I believe that purpose will always connect with resources and income as well. Because if I say, hey, the Lord wants me to design shoes, you wouldn't expect for me to open up my trunk and just hand you a bag with shoes in it. And so seeing the value in yourself as well in your work is important. You know, I'm not here, you know, to take, but it's definitely a transaction. And like you said before, the tears and the pain and the healing that comes with my book was definitely there. And so that means something and it's valuable. And if you don't see it as valuable, no one else will.
Most definitely. So now we've kind of talked about one of the things of publishing is getting ready for new authors. Now let's talk about the book in the room. So one of my biggest questions, because you give a lot of nuggets in the book and just things to think about. And one of the things that got me was, what are purpose killers? What do you mean by that?
Yes. And so purpose killers can be anybody, even your dog at times. Because I swear, when writing my book, I had to put my dogs outside because they were in the way. And so a purpose killer is just anybody who openly speaks against what you're doing, your capabilities, and sometimes just sharing their opinion. I feel, you know, we know that there's power in the tongue, right? And oftentimes, and even I've at different times, we have tendency to just talk without thinking. And so when writing my book, I realized that I couldn't express really to really anyone my thoughts, what I was doing, you know, the direction the Lord had me in and where I was going. Because even sometimes not on purpose, people will say words and sometimes it'll start doubt or create more fear. And so even like you said with the writing, um, everybody you know might not be a writer. You might not know any people. And so even with writing things, something as simple as, and hey, you're doing that, but why? Is it necessary? You said you didn't want to do it. I don't think God will want you to write that, or even how I would talk to myself sometimes. I had to rebuke myself and get myself in check because the first thing I would tell people is, or how I'm going to write a book? I can't spell. I can't do this and I can't do that. And so I think that it's very important when writing your book to just let it be a secret. It's okay. Even during the writing process, like nobody got like my drafts. I wasn't like, hey, how do you feel about this? Or what do you think about that? And just making sure that you are, protecting what you have and covering it because it is a purpose, right? You are doing it for a reason. And so your why is really important. And when you show off your thoughts and your work too soon, you leave the door open for people to come in and convince you that it's not as good as you thought, that you're not doing it right, that you're not qualified, or that there's no point. And sometimes those things can be subtle and sometimes they can be huge. And so I think it's important to kind of shield yourself from that. And so instead of having to hope and pray that everybody has the best intentions, I'm just going to keep this for myself. And when I'm done with it, you can buy it and then you can read it. And then your opinions won't sway or change anything about it because it's done.
Mm, that's true. I've had that as well, where I'm writing and I'm like, because you're so excited, like I'm doing this thing, like I'm doing the secret agent, I'm doing it, and maybe too soon you show it off, and then someone's like, you little, you could do this, and it really does crush your creativity because I feel like when you write anything and you're going to put out in the public eye, that's a piece of your soul. And no one likes to expose themselves and then be rejected as well. So that's really good advice right there. It's just kind of when you're writing to keep it almost on DL, keep it there and keep it with you, nurture it so that and kind of care for it. So maybe when it's ready to be published, it's standing on its own 2 feet.
Exactly. And so, like I mentioned earlier, even the delivery and pushing forth things in this season, the same with babies, that birthing room is very limited. And even when you have a baby, it's not common or not necessarily the best to be like, hey, I had a baby 7 days ago. Let me take them to Publix and show them to the people over the counter. It's a time to present and it's a time to, like you said, nurture and just keep at home. And it's for the safety and just to protect what you have. And so I think that's the perfect example. When you give birth, you don't take the baby out to the world the next day. And so there is a time and a period where you just sit back and hey, it's just going to be us for a while until you're strong enough and you can handle until it's the time to present. And so I think just having wisdom and that will make the writing process so much easier and make it more likely for you to succeed and finish.
Mm. That's really good. That's just hope everyone's hearing that. Those are nuggets right there, some gems, because I think creative souls have the tendency to be a little more sensitive, and it's not a bad thing that God uses creativity and our humanity to do His work. So that's okay, but then you gotta guard yourself. You gotta keep yourself safe. Gotta keep everything going. So one of my questions is, so I know you mentioned earlier in your book about being in a routine of worship. And so my question was, how has your perception of God been affected when you're out of this, now that you're out of this routine? How has that changed?
Yeah, so not being in a routine is great because then you're able to flow. And when it's not an obligation or just a box you're checking off, you're able to have intimacy. And so even as described in the book, and I feel like it's the best way I can say it, is that I stopped casually dating God, right? I stopped with the, hey, we're acquainted and I'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks for coming over, but I'm going to need you to head out now. And so now that we're out of that routine, it's more of a relationship. It's more God says if you sup with him, he'll sup with you. And so we're able to talk. I haven't limited him and his time and his access to me. And that's what routines are. It's for the, hey, make sure I get this done. We're knocking it off. And so when changing that, it allows the Lord to flow and you have more access to him and he has more access to you. And so I never want our relationship again to be something I do like brushing my teeth. Like wake up in the morning, hey, that's what you're supposed to do. You get it done and you go on with your day. Later in the day, you're not like, oh, I brushed my teeth earlier and it felt this way, or it was such a beautiful moment. It's just something you do and get over with. And so I feel like when we get in a routine and we get in religion, our moments with God are like brushing our teeth and they're very insignificant. And so when we get out of that, you're able to have not just a good life or a great day, you're able to have the abundant life that he wants to give us.
Ooh, that's true. And that with your book, I feel like you were like all up in, in my life, my business. But the idea of just a routine of God, because a lot of people say you need to, especially in church, it's like you need to be doing this time in the morning. You be doing all day long. Then when you get back here, you guys go ahead and read the Bible at the end of the day. So it feels like they give you a routine. Like it's morning, something in the middle of the day, and at night. And so by default, I think that's where we settle. But as for me, I know time has gone on. I'm like, so I say, this is not working for me because it feels like a routine. You always, somehow you end up failing. You miss a day, you miss 2 days, and you're just still stumbling. It's like you never want to pick it back up because I feel like routines have been built for failure. Where if you have as you were saying, relationship, it just feels easier. Like, hey, God. And I think sometimes we guard God, like God's in this little box right here, and I can only open it once a day to let him out. and that's not how it is. It's maybe I think people don't understand how realistic God is. Or as if you read a passage, and then maybe after that you listen to a sermon, it's still in the flow.
Yes. Yes, I definitely agree with you. And people do. They're like, hey, it should be like this and it should be like that. And you'll miss out. Because, you sit with the Lord at 10 o'clock. Today, he might want you to sit with him at 3 o'clock. And that might be a moment you never had. But if you're not open to it, you don't remember. Even though as you were speaking, because I'm an image girl. So that's just how I see. That's how I talk. That's what I like picture. So I was just like, okay, when you're just like, ooh, it's just thinking about it like it's food. Because, you're supposed to eat the Lord. It's just like, okay, well, if you're used to having breakfast at this time, lunch at this time, dinner at this time, you might not remember what you had 2 weeks from today when you were doing that, but you'll remember Thanksgiving last year or the year before, because in that moment, it was a flow. In that moment, you were more so, hey, let me be intentional. I want to be here. Don't nobody on Thanksgiving wake up at 9 o'clock and just like, okay, it's breakfast time. Most often, if you're anything like my folks, you're going to wear your stretchy pants and you're going to wait throughout the day because you're in anticipation for how the day is going to go. And we remember that way better than we can say, hey, 3 weeks ago, I had an Eggo waffle. Maybe, I don't know, because there's nothing worth remembering. And so I think about that with our relationship with Christ.
That's it. That's a good one right there. Because I never remember my breakfast. I just knew I ate because I wasn't starving. So also, my other question was, so how do you feel young girls should be taught to be strong leaders? Because you mentioned, because I feel like all the people wave their hand, all the oldest can wave their hand in the air, that you are given. You're not like, it's not, you don't feel it's a gift. You are given, like, here you go. The responsibility to look over siblings, to be the head of the household, have responsibility. And you just kind of bump along. You never let anyone know you didn't know what you were doing.
No, you cannot show fear. That is not the time. And so definitely I agree with being the oldest and just being a woman just anyway. There are a lot of responsibilities. And like you said, they say it's a gift, but it don't feel like a gift. It feels more like a burden. unfortunately, depending on how it's done. And so just being thrown out there, it's just like, hey, you have all these eyes looking at you, and these people want to know what to do, how to do it, how you gonna get it done, and just the fear of like not failing, you know? And so even like I mentioned throughout my book, I was told all the time, like, you are a role model, you are the example, you are all these things. And which was super hard for me because I'm like, okay, what is that? What does that look like? What's the blueprint for that? You know, no, oftentimes people don't teach you what they feel like you should be because they assume that you just are. And so coming into a world where you have all these expectations and you don't want to fail anybody because you genuinely want to be the best you because somebody told you that's who you were or who you were supposed to be, it can be very hard. And so that was something I struggled with even up until adulthood, trying to figure out, okay, I was told that I'm all these things. Um, Nobody told me how I should execute them or taught me what it should look like or what it should be. But I am told when I fail, and I am told when I don't get it right, and I am told when it's off and it needs to be better. But nobody tells me how to get to the better. And so that can be very frustrating in children's lives and even as adults, especially women, where you feel this responsibility and you're supposed to be all these things, especially to your siblings. Because, like, okay, well, you're a woman. One day you're supposed to be a mom. You should know how to nurture them. You should know how to care for them. You're a girl. You should know how to cook. Take the meat out the freezer and make something, make something shape, make it work. And so I feel like you're bought into this life and it's just like, hey, here's your Barbie doll and here's your toy kitchen. You got 30 minutes to figure it out because we gonna need that fake chicken to turn into a rotisserie chicken by the time I get back. And I feel like it definitely sets us up for failure when it's all these expectations, but it's not taught how to handle it or how to do it, or when you don't have an example of what that looks like. But I'm not even sure that example would help because then you're just growing up how to learn how to be somebody else. And so I think it's important that not just, hey, choose whatever you want to be, but that we're in communication with God, with who we need to be, as well as our parents. Because, you have to train a child in the way that should go. And so before you tell me who I am, God should tell you who I am. So that when you're giving me information, that you're giving me the correct information. And if you're trying to teach me something, you're teaching me in the way that God desires me to learn it because he knows me better than anybody. And I think oftentimes that's missed. Like, I think that people have things that they need. They have jobs that need to be done. Parents have a lot of tasks, especially when you have a lot of kids that need to be taken care of. And so it's like, hey, you're second in command. And oftentimes we find ourselves trying to complete and fulfill the lives of other people because they don't have the time or the space to do so.
Deep right there. And so really kind of open that up, it's like really trying to have a relationship rooted in communication, because I feel like that's kind of, I feel like that may be the root of a lot of problems, because you feel as a kid, you feel afraid to tell them like, hey, I have no idea what you're doing and I have no idea what to do, but then you've already told me you expect it. So then it feels like it shuts down my communication because now, well, I got to go ahead and dig up in my brain that's not there something to know, like to do what you want me to do. And that's why, like, maybe my one thing growing up was to stare real hard. Like in the kitchen, I would sit in the corner watching my grandmothers and my mom cook and just staring to come, because I knew when they were done cooking or when they were done and they made what they were going to make, that if it ran out and I had my younger cousins, that I had to know, at least have an idea, know what to do to make something to feed them when they were away. So it really was not really communication. It was like, it wasn't until I feel like for me, my adult life, when I was older, that I felt comfortable to ask like, hey, grandma, how do you make
Yeah.
because they weren't going to beat me up by this time, I hope.
Yeah. You feel like you aged out at that point where they could be like, I am so disappointed with you. And it does take a while. and it does transfer into adulthood, and it affects how we communicate with other people that are not even, in that way, anybody in authority, anybody we connect with. And so it's just like, hey, eventually there's better, but when unfortunately it's something that lasts a while for most of us. So we do get to the point we feel like, oh, we got too big or we aged out. So, the backlash for what I'm about to say might not be as severe. And I'm older now and I can take it better. So now I can tell you. And we don't have that when we're younger, which leaves you like in a life of fear and just scared, or like, hey, if I say anything, the earth might crumble. Somebody might drop dead in here if I just say, hey, I need help, because it's not an option. It doesn't seem like at that point.
That's true. And really, it's kind of like, it's really starting young as talking to our spirit. Because I just think personally, Black women are just all Black women just are great leaders. Point blank, period. I just think that's the case. But I think where we may fall short is how we nurture that in that child. What do you say to her to help her build her up, and knowing that it's a safe place? Because if it's a lot of things going on, I know for me, my childhood, it wasn't. I didn't feel it was a safe place to say this is what I need right now. It's feel like I'll take this and try to make this into gold, whatever this is, that type of thing. So I would think. So I feel like you're saying with these young girls is that communication is needed and it's okay. Like failure is okay. It's part of life.
Definitely.
So any young girls out there, failure is okay. No one gets out of life without messing up.
And to not know is okay.
Mm-hmm.
You come in this earth not knowing a lot of things. Everything is to be learned and to be taught. And to not know doesn't mean to fail or to be broken. If you don't know, that's okay.
Facts right there. So my question is, so you're talking about, you have a chapter in here about the silence. Mm-hmm. And what do you think is the root of women being silenced? Where do you think that comes from?
Yes. And so I think just with silence, a big part of it, like we talked about, the responsibilities that come with things, you want to be there, you want to nurture, you want to help. And so it was hard to open my mouth to say, hey, I don't know how to do those things, as well as in knowing that, hey, it seems like I was born and birthed into all this authority, right? All this power and all this responsibility. And not only do I not know what I'm doing, if I tell you I don't, even if you're not mad, that kind of leaves you missing something. And so the fear too of negatively impacting those around me. Like, I'm not feeling my best today, but you need me to show up for you how you need me to show up. And so that will affect you. And I don't want to be the reason you're not having a good day. I don't want to be the reason why things aren't going perfect or mess anything up. And so I think that makes it easy to be quiet. So it's a lot easier to suffer in silence, it seems, than to say anything that will make other people suffer around you. Or if you feel like you're lacking, you don't want to, reflect that on anybody else. So I think it comes a lot more natural than we would say. And even, as girls, you're always like, you have to be ladylike. You don't want to be loud. You don't want to be extra. You don't want to be emotional. You definitely don't want to be angry. You don't want to be these things. And so there's so many stereotypes and there's so much stuff out there. And it's just like, okay, I'm trying to represent myself the way everybody wants me to. And if I do this wrong, like, the weight that's going to carry, or are people going to hear me? Or are you just going to see what you heard about or what you already assumed, Am I being emotional today because I'm on my period and girls are just so dramatic at this time of the month? Or is it something in my soul that's seriously lacking and I need help? And so it's a trust thing as well. Like not being able to really trust those around you to know you well enough, because if they knew you the way you would like, they would know that the responsibility and how they're going about things is not right. And so just not having that support to where I can trust my thoughts, opinions, and my feelings with you. It's not a safe space for me to let you know that because it's going to impact you and it's also going to impact me, and we're all going to be miserable. And so just taking it up as like a sacrifice. Like, I'm the leader, I'm responsible. And so if somebody's going to hurt here, I've already started, so I'll finish by myself.
That's true. That's so I understand that it's easier to suffer silence, but you still suffer, and it takes a big amount of courage to say like, hey, this is what happened, and then be okay with the consequences, whether good or bad. Whether this grandma says, "Oh, okay, baby, that's all right," da, 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 or you get maybe that aunt who's like, "How do you not know?"
Yeah,
That type of thing. Because you never know which one you're going to get.
you don't. And it's always a 50-50 chance. And once you have too many of those experiences, it's like the percentage goes up. So it's like if I seen this kind of reaction the first time and the second time, now it doesn't seem 50-50 to me. It's like a 90% chance that this is what's going to happen. And so you also try to control, it causes a controlling issue. You try to control your experiences by getting ahead of them. So I noticed that was something I would do. Like, I would try to overthink and think out situations like, okay, I'm going to say this. This happened last time, that happened. And so I would come up with my own outcomes. And so to me, I thought it was strategy. Just like, okay, I know how this is going to go. So I'm going to, avoid this and do it this way. And it did not serve me, but that was the solution that I came up with at the time.
Mm. So this is really kind of feels like for a woman just to kind of really know who you are and just keeping a safe atmosphere, which can help with being able to talk and say what needs to go, what's happening, and not to be silenced when things really do happen, or when you really need the information to do the next thing instead of searching out. Because now I can't talk to you. Now I may be able to search out for it, which could lead me a number of two ways. Some good, some not so good.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So with that, if I get led more than one, two ways, when something traumatic happens, what do you believe are the steps to kind of break those down and get out of trauma?
Yeah, so I think when something traumatic happens, the steps are different depending on who you are as well as the age too. I think at some points, unfortunately, the mindset is not there, especially at the ages for a lot of trauma that I've experienced. I didn't have the experience or the wisdom and the maturity at the time to get out of those things. So I think the biggest way to help with trauma, especially when we're talking about children, right? At that point, is that we can't wait to react to things. Like, we have to be more proactive. I feel like there needs to be conversations before. There needs to make sure that there's a safe space out there before. I think oftentimes we try to work backwards. Like, oh, all these things have happened. These things have taken place. So how can we fix it and get out? Well, and in some cases, that's going to be there, but I feel like it's way more proactive if we think beforehand. And so the best example I can think of, like if it's a fire in your house, we hear that a lot as children. Not really much since being children, but the firefighters tell you, you need a plan. You need a plan before you smell the smoke, before you see the flame, you have to have a plan. And I feel like we live in a society now where everybody's so busy and we have so much going on, or we'll assume things will never happen to us and they can never be us, to where we wake up and we're having to fight fires instead of having a plan for before the smoke. You know, everything is beeping, but we're not alert and we're not alarmed because, that doesn't happen to me and that doesn't happen in my family. And it's kind of the sense of denial that we feel like we're untouchable, which I've experienced even in my family. Like, this can never be us. And that is what just alarms us. And so when things happen, we always have to figure out the aftermath, which is hard. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where you're having to deal with the after, which is what the book is about, because a lot of things I have to take after I make decisions, because there's always an after. Making sure that even if you can't create that safe space, that you reach out. Like I said, it's never bad to ask for help. therapy does wonders. I know in the Christian community, a lot of people are like, oh, let's go to therapy. A lot of people's like, call Jesus on the main line. You don't need it, but everybody's different. I've had to call on Jesus, and it's things that people who have never and will never be able to do for me that only God has done. But at the same time, he also sent me to people say, hey, you're going to go to therapy for the next 6, 7 months, and you're going to keep going. And, it's different ways to do things. So being open to therapy, being open to talking to people, making sure that there's not a pride level there where, hey, this happened, we're embarrassed, so we're just going to act like it didn't happen. No, somebody should know. Everybody, especially in the Christian community, like talk about, I love my pastor. We go here, there, and, we do this at the church. Take your children there, and not just to go with you to wear matching outfits and to sit there, but making sure that they're hands-on, making sure they have outlets to people to talk to. Because even though, because like they say, it takes a village. And sometimes I might not want to discuss this with my mom, but, sitting at church, I might sit there and talk to. So making sure that we create outlets to not be so closed off, to not be selfish, to not live in denial, to not think that we're untouchable, but making sure that those things are set up and in place. Because what will it hurt, whether there's trauma or not? What will it hurt having a group of people who love your children or who love you around you and in place who want to help you? Like there can never be too much help. And I think that's hard for people. A lot of times we feel like we got it in-house. We don't need this. We can take care of our own kids. And that kind of mentality leaves a lot of children left without the resources that they could have if the pride wasn't in the way.
Most definitely, that's right. A really great outline of just making it a community and a culture of help. Mm-hmm. Because I can totally agree that even for adults, being okay to talk about it, finding other people, and not being ashamed if it's not in the family. That's a very big thing for a lot of people. That is like, it's not my, no, they're not my family, so I can't talk to them. Yeah, you can. Like if it's nowhere in the house, God provides any way he can, whether it's in the house or out the house, to help with that, especially when trauma comes. I like the idea of having a plan, because I know in school, everyone knows you had, for some areas, you had 3 things. You had a fire drill, had a tornado drill, had a weather drill. You had them all year round, no matter what. Just you always had to rehearse it in the event it ever happened. And maybe one year it never happened, and maybe the year after next, all 3 of them happened. But so at least you had an idea what to do. You didn't just run around the room like, I don't know what to do.
Freaking out. Yeah.
Right.
The building is gone and now you just outside, don't know what to do. Yeah. It's
right.
important. It's important.
Right. And I think parents have a lot of parents, and people in general have the fear of, if I talk about it, it's going to happen. Or if I speak more, it's going to make it worse. And I've come from the fact from being in therapy that it makes it better. It hurts at first. It's just like when you work out, it hurts a lot. But as you continue to do it, it gets better and it unravels, and it makes you like realize that the problem that you made 10 feet tall was actually only 1 inch. Mm-hmm. But you would never got there if you hadn't been willing to take those first steps. So that's some great nuggets right there. That talking about it helps it. Doesn't hurt it.
Yep, sheds a light, and it has to be light there. Because when you talk about silence, when you talk about darkness and trauma, those things thrive in the dark. And just if I never hear the phrase, what happens in this house stays in this house again, I can't express how much joy that would bring me. Like, I pray to never hear that again. It doesn't benefit anybody. It's just a breeding ground for secrets and for silence and just for darkness. And so whenever you shed the light on something and you call it out, that helps. So whether before or after, shed that light and get help. Because I'd rather everybody know and I be healed than nobody know what I'm dealing with and I suffer.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So, what suffering signs? You have mentioned in your book that putting down your identity is putting down your birthright and authority.
Mhm.
So could you kind of unpack that a little bit? Like, what do you kind of mean by that?
Yes. And so, God gives us authority and he gives us access to all these things. And so when we're walking around not knowing who we are and whose we are, you're giving up so many benefits, right? You're giving up so many perks and so much that you can have in life that you simply don't have. And so the Lord gives us keys to the kingdom. And so when I think about that, like if the Lord hands you a key and you say, hey, this is the key you're going to use to get in your house, you're going to get in your car, you're going to get in all these places, you're going to get in the job, you're going to have everything you need to have. You're going to have the key to your joy, to your peace, to your health. You wouldn't just walk around and throw that key in the air and just walk away and say, hey, I'm feeling good. I don't need it, because then you lose access to things and everything becomes harder. And now, you're looking for happiness instead of joy because that's dependent on somebody. Now you're begging and working at jobs where you barely make anything when the Lord would have had you working over here where you have a surplus. Now you're living in the studio, which is nothing wrong with that space, but it's all about what he desires to give us. But I never at a point in my life again want to live in a studio where God desires me to have a 6-bedroom, if you know what I mean. And so that's what I think about when we talk about that access.
Mm. So that's really good, having access and being okay with walking in who you are and accessing all the gifts and talents that God's giving us. That's really good. Ooh, that's just a lot to unpack. Especially identity is such a huge. It's just a significant topic, and children generally don't have their own for a while, and it takes a lot of the parent and the people, the community around them to help them find their own. Which my next question was, what do you think people have? So sorry, why do you think, really the question is, why do you think people have a tendency to mold themselves and not wait for God? Because you talked a little bit about trying to make yourself into something else.
Yes. And so, because I feel like it's a rush. We got responsibilities, life is coming, things are happening. You're meeting new people, you got school, you got so much going on. And so that's why identity is so important. And it's not something that can be waited on. Because everywhere you go, your identity is how you represent. You have to represent yourself everywhere you go. And so when you haven't been introduced to your identity and you're going places where you have to introduce yourself, you have to come up with something, right? And so we get forced in this season where we're like, okay, you look around, you're making observations, and you're like, okay, what do I need? What do others have? What do I like? What do I want? And it becomes a factory, kind of like Build a Bear, but you're trying to build yourself. And so you're taking pieces from everything you're seeing and for everyone around you. And you're just like, okay, how would this suit me? Because remember, you are the oldest. You are one, you are a leader, you are all these things. And so you have these titles, but no characteristics yet. You have no way how to execute. And so you come up in your own mind with what that looks like. And sometimes we let other people tell us what that looks like. Hey, leaders talk, they speak up for people. So whether you know the words or not, you form some kind of word because you have to say something. And so we start to hear all this information and it kind of goes in and it processes. And then we come up with this counterfeit version of ourselves, right? Counterfeit version of ourselves. And then as we continue to go on, whatever's needed, I know that's what I did, kind of like an upgrade. So it's kind of like the iPhone before the iPhone came. So it's like, okay, we assess this and we assess that. This needs to be worked out, this needs to be put in. And so you upgrade yourself and you upgrade yourself. And then, before you know it, you're the Terminator. Don't know how you got there, but hey, this is what I need to be successful. This is what I need to be for everybody else. And you're a robot, built of all these different parts that either people gave you or that you found. And so now your heart is just filled with, sorrow and scraps.
That's That is true. It feels like you, especially, I think, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, ask a younger child, the youngest, to see what they feel like. But the oldest, I feel like needs to get it all. When you're just like, you have to be, you feel like you won't have to become what's needed and never, I guess, right, never have time to really figure out where's your strength. Am I actually extrovert? Am I, or am I introvert? And so now this is an extra push for me to do this. Yes. Like those are considered. Like there's considered, like extroverts are wanted in leaders, and there's no such thing as an introverted leader. But there is. You know, and you just don't know about it until you start to learn and to grow and to be okay with saying that's not me. And it takes, it's because once you upgrade, and sometimes we said we don't take upgrades that we don't need. And so then we have to find a way to not really downgrade, but to be more true to the home model. Like this is like if you had an iPhone with an outer box, and this other box is the outer box, and then all this stuff you add to your iPhone, it's still, you can talk to it. It just makes it more difficult. Where if you took it all off and got back to the core of the phone, it's easier to use and easier to make work. And that's where I'm like, so this is where we learn with our parents, our community, as we're going through life, because the life doesn't stop, to be able to take time. And I know from one, you talk about resting the Lord and understanding to how do you rest when it feels like things are going 80 to 100, finding a way to slow it down and make sense of it, because I feel like the enemy makes it easy to make it jumbled, so there's no sense to understanding.
Yes. Confusion. It's not like the Lord. But yeah, just resting first, it just starts with the decision, right? I feel like sometimes we overcomplicate things because we're already confused and we're just like, what could it be? And everything has to be so complex all the time. But rest is a decision. It's a decision to show up and say, okay, Lord, this is where I'm at. Like, don't sugarcoat it. Just this is where I'm at. This is why I'm overwhelmed. I need help here. I can't do nothing with this, so I really need your help. And like I said, it's really having to take a step back from pride in order to successfully do these things. Because if you have pride, you don't know you need help or you can't ask. And so, hey, I need help resting. Or even being taught what that is, I need you to teach me what rest is. And so just even in this process of my life, knowing that rest is not necessarily a nap or a break, or, hey, I'm just going to not do nothing for 3 weeks. Sometimes that's not what my rest is. Sometimes my rest is a no. You ask me for this, and no, I can't do that. Sometimes my rest is, hey, come sit and talk with me for a second. We're going to talk for these few moments. I'm going to give you what you need. We're going to boost you back up and we're going to send you back out there. Sometimes the rest is a stop. And so having the wisdom to know that, hey, exactly what I need and what I want is found in God, and not trying to figure it out for yourselves. And so the Lord takes a lot of that weight off, because he says, come to me, I'll give you the cheat code and I'll let you know. But oftentimes we feel like, especially when you're used to struggle and you're used to trauma, I know that was hard for me with those things, and not used to receiving it. It was so hard when God would give me anything or tell me to do things I felt like were too simple because I should suffer for this. I didn't cry enough for this. I didn't ask you enough. I didn't wait long enough. You answered me too quickly. And so we get used to this mindset that everything has to come hard, and the Lord wants everything to be difficult, and everything is a sad story and a sad song, and it's not. And so even in the rest, in the confusion, just go back. And I think oftentimes we'll be surprised at how easy it is when we are available to it and when we ask. A lot of times we don't have rest because you really don't want it. You feel like you're Wonder Woman and you're Superwoman. You can take care of it. You feel like if you think about it on a different way, you'll figure it out. You remember the times that you made it happen before, because I make things happen. And so you don't want rest. You acknowledge that you're tired because you can feel it, but you don't want to rest because you're in the mode of doing you. And so you have to choose to stop doing you, and you have to choose to submit in order to get rest. Because if not, you're just taking a break from doing you so you can come back after your lunch to continue to do you. And there's a big difference in that.
So not the lunch break.
Lunch break.
But that's really good. Understanding rest is necessary, but it's different forms of rest. I feel like everyone doesn't understand like real rest is not just saying not just not do anything, because you can still be going, but you're still, I think for me, having like in my going, there's peace in it. That makes me use to rest. So now my mind's not so jumbled. It's like this is gonna work out. It may not have did how it look how I want it to look like, but it's going to have to work out because that God's given us. He's given us authority and dominion. So, and then when we speak, we have the power to help shift the atmosphere when we speak His word. So that's really empowering. Understanding that's how you chill out and understanding that yours can look different, but hopefully at the end the experience still is better than when you started.
Yeah. Seeking you shall find. If you really want it, you'll find it. He'll show it to you. But you have to want it. Not just in words, but sincerely.
So that's where that gotta be available and willing. Because you want the willing vessel. You don't want just anybody.
Yeah, who I want help? Like, do you want rest? And how the Lord wants you to do it, or do you need, Him to give you that 5-hour energy so you keep doing what you want to do? And so it's a difference,
right? Because even Jesus slept in storms when the disciples going across the lake. He was asleep. He was the only one asleep.
In a deep sleep, feet up, and so.
But
depends on how they want it.
That's true. And so, even talking about storms, how do you feel? How do you learn from your storms?
Yes. And so, and definitely this book is a book of storms. If I could, say it any other way. And I felt like it was a whole bunch of loss that I took. It was just L's everywhere. And so what the Lord did for me, He transferred my loss to learning lessons. And so I never lost anything. And so even in the storm, it came and it did its thing and it tore down a lot of stuff and it destroyed a lot of things for me, and it took a lot of things from me. But the storm is over now and I'm still here. And so what I learned through my storm is no matter how hard it rains, no matter how dark it looks, when it's over with, because of the God I serve, I will still be here. And so you can switch the weather and you can change the temperature, you can do all those things, but I am firmly rooted and I'm firmly planted. And so no matter what comes and how the winds blow, I will still be here. And so He's shown me that without the shadow of a doubt. So no matter how things are looking, I've learned that when I look around and when I see what's around me, I know even though it affects what's going on around me, it doesn't have to affect me. And so that's what I learned the most through my storms, that I'm still here. And so they kept coming, but that gives me confidence too. And that gives me assurance that the Lord has the final say so when it comes to me. And He never leaves me out to just let anything happen to me, because it all happened. But still, I can't say that it happened to me. I can only say that it happened for me. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Right. That's true. Because in your book, there's so many gems in this book. Everyone you read, you need to take a read of it. Because one of the things you said that, of course, we know God is His fruits are love, peace, all those things. And you mentioned that you knew that you didn't learn your lesson because you got bitterness at the end instead of the fruits that God had, which is usually peace and love and kindness. And so that can kind of be our thermostat or our tester, that when we go through something, if at the end there's a little bit of real business, you may not have learned something. You may need to go back to God and say, hey, this don't feel right. This don't feel like you. So either I'm wrong still somewhere in there, or you're gonna have to do something.
Yep. And trust and believe he does not leave you that way. So whether you realize it or not, it's coming back. It was a lot of things I kept walking away from, like, oh, that's over with, that's done. And the Lord will circle back. He does not forget, and he does not leave us broken. And bitterness is brokenness. And it's not abundant life, and there's no way to live. I do not recommend it to anybody. I did it for so long. I promise you. I did it everywhere I could, and it's not the breeding ground for success and happiness and joy. And he does not leave us that way. God loves you too much for you to be bitter and broken, and so he will come back. Now he's a gentleman; he's not gonna force it on you. So if you want to stay bitter a little while longer, he'll let you, but then he will come back, and then he will come back. And so we just thank the Lord for his grace and mercy, that he cares, he loves you enough to come back. And so you keep saying no, but it doesn't stop him from asking. But be careful with that, because at some point we all do run out of grace. And so you want to make sure you're on the right side of that.
That's true. My biggest thing is says, so you talked about also in your book, how does someone say yes to God? Because it feels like at times life has said no to everything else, but then how do you have the courage to say yes to God? Like, here, help me out. I need it all.
Yes. And so I think the biggest thing, just even with the gospel, everything, is know that God loved us first. He did all the work first. So God doesn't tell you, hey, take my hand and say yes to me, and then you'll see everything I have for you, or you'll see all the things I can do for you, right? He presents it backwards. He gives you all the things first, and then he lets you decide if you want to be a part of it and partake of it. And so when saying your yes to God, the best part about it to me that I will never get over, and that just rings in my soul, is that he said yes to me first.
Mm.
Right? So, he offered this to me, knowing what I had been through, knowing my lows, knowing my highs, knowing me on my worst day. And Lord, it was a lot of worst days, and that's who he said yes to. And that's who he extended his mercy and grace to. And so I think when we come into the knowledge of that, and when we believe, like, hey, not understanding, because to know something and to understand it is different. And so we don't lean on our understanding. And if you spend time waiting to say yes to God to understand, you'll never get around to it, because we'll never be able to comprehend. But when we know what he set before us, like when I knew, and I look back and I said, hey, even before the healing, because my yes came before I wrote the book, right? So even after all these things, she's like, I'm still here. And the Lord still keeps calling me. He still wants me. Why does this man want me? I'm a liability. I don't think he's thinking about this. Like, who is the Lord's financial advisor? He's wasting money in a bottomless pit coming after me. And yet he still did. And so watching him say yes to me, because God doesn't just say yes to you once. If you listen and you lean in, he constantly reminds you. And so seeing how he loved me and how he kept picking on me and betting on me out of all people, that helped me to say yes to him. And then once I said the yes, he showed me why he picked me and why he kept saying yes. And so I am in awe of him, and I'll never stop. But I am in awe of me, because he showed me my identity and why he chose me and how he created me. And so now I get to look in the mirror and say, wow, I was a good bet. I was a good, I was a good horse to bet on. I was a good person to put this into. But you don't get to that and get to see that until you become in oneness with him. So first he shows you why you should bet on him. And then after, he goes back and show you why he betted on you.
Right there. He keeps chasing you because he's the first one who believed in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself. Whew, that's not a speak right there. That how awesome it is that with all the talents and gifts that God has given everyone, and even when we don't want to use them or we don't even know we have them, that he's saying that one right there, who's like a little crazy, she's good though. Like constantly reaffirming that we're enough because he made us in his image. That's good right there.
Man.
So it's been I don't want to stop having so much other to talk about, but it is closing out. So my question is, our little lightning round. So my first question is for young writers listening, was one piece of advice that you would give them on their author journey?
One piece of advice I would give is to know your why. To know your why. To really, really know your why is important. Why you're doing what you're doing, why you're saying what you're saying, why this is important. And once you know your why at any point of the writing process, you can remind yourself of why you're doing what you're doing. And that'll be enough if you have a strong why. And if you know that this is important to keep you moving forward.
Good facts right there. What book would you recommend young authors to read?
Yeah, so I must say, if I could recommend a book for you to read, because I am biased, my dear, it would be Yeshua's Yes, about my love story with Christ and how he said yes to me and how I spend the rest of my life saying yes to him.
Mm-hmm. And where can people connect with you? How can they get in touch with you, find you, collaborate with you? Where should they go?
Yes, and so I am on all social media. So on TikTok, I am Victoria T Talks. You can find me there. I am also Victoria Lofton, Loftin. On Facebook, I also am Victoria T Talks. On Instagram as well. You can also contact me at victoria.lofton@icloud.com. And my website is createdcrown.me. So that's how you can connect with me.
Awesome, everyone. And so just also a reminder, everything will be in the links below to connect with Victoria and her wonderful story and be a part of a wonderful mission of empowering women and young girls through traumas. Because we don't have to stay at trauma. We can be triumphant at the end. And Victoria is just one of the awesome examples that we have. I have pleasure to talk to today. So catch you all next time. Thank you for listening to Pen by Design. Links are in the show notes of all items mentioned in today's show. Don't forget to pick up your free self-publishing guide to start your author journey in the show notes. Pen your own story designed by you. Catch you next episode. Bye for now.